Welcome to Guideline Central. My name is Dr. Tabitha Michaud, and today we're going to be talking about IBS management. So the American Gastroenterological Association, or the AGA, in July of 2022 had published new guidelines titled The Pharmacological Management of Irritable Bowel Syndrome with Diarrhea. Now, these guidelines were published in the AGA's Gastroenterology Journal, with the intended purpose being to provide updated evidence-based recommendations on the pharmacological management of irritable bowel syndrome with diarrhea, or IBS-D. Now, just a little background, this guideline is actually an update to the AGA's 2014 guideline titled The Pharmacological Management of Irritable Bowel Syndrome. Now, in that guideline, the AGA had included both IBS with diarrhea and IBS with constipation's recommendations. However, in 2022, when they rewrote these guidelines, IBS with constipation and IBS with diarrhea were each given their own guideline. So for this video and today, we're going to be only talking about IBS with diarrhea, but if you're looking for the IBS with constipation recommendations in that guideline, make sure to check out guidelinescentral.com to find all the IBS-C content there. Now, before we get into the recommendations from today's guideline, I just want to mention the AGA has used the GRADE approach for these recommendations, meaning each recommendation has been evaluated and assigned both a strength of recommendation as well as a certainty of evidence grading. Also, for each of the recommendations that we go over today, just know that the pharmacological option that we're discussing is being compared to the alternative of having no treatment at all. Now, let's get into the guideline. The first medication from the AGA that is new to their 2022 recommendations is for the medication Adaline. Now, this medicine was given a conditional recommendation with a moderate certainty of evidence, but do note that it is contraindicated in patients without a gallbladder, as well as those who drink more than 3 alcoholic beverages a day. Our next recommendation from the AGA is one that we saw in their 2014 guidelines, and it's back in 2022. That is for the medication rifaximin. Rifaximin was given a conditional recommendation with moderate certainty of evidence, but something that is new to the 2022 guideline is for the use of rifaximin as a retreatment. So if you had patients who initially responded to the rifaximin for their IBS-D symptoms, but they had recurrence, you can try retreatment with rifaximin, and that was given also a conditional recommendation with moderate certainty of evidence. The next recommendation from the AGA for their IBS-D patients is one that we saw in their 2014 guidelines. It's now back in the 2022 guidelines, and that's for the medication elocitron. Now, this medicine was given a conditional recommendation with moderate certainty of evidence, but there is the implementation remark that this should only be used for women with severe IBS-D who are under a risk management program. The next medication from the AGA that is recommended for IBS-D patients is the medicine loperamide, a pretty well-known over-the-counter antidiarrheal agent. This medicine was seen in the 2014 guideline and is back now in the 2022 guideline with the same recommendation. And that's going to be a conditional recommendation with a very low certainty of evidence. Now, for these next 3 classes of medications, the AGA did list them in both the IBS-D and the IBS-C guidelines. So for both the IBS with diarrhea and IBS with constipation subtypes, these 3 classes of medications are options. But just remember that when we list them for either IBS-D or IBS-C, the strength of recommendation and the certainty of evidence grading will be the same. Now, the first class of medications from the AGA for both IBS-D and IBS-C patients is for tricyclic antidepressants. So TCAs were seen in the 2014 guideline as well, and in this guideline, the same recommendation applied, and that's a conditional recommendation with low certainty of evidence. The next class of medications listed as an option for both IBS-C and IBS-D, the AGA has antispasmodic medications that we saw in their 2014 guideline, and it's back in the 2022 with an unchanged recommendation. And that's going to be a conditional recommendation with low certainty of evidence. And the last class of medications that we're going to go over, as well as the final recommendation from the AGA for our IBS-D patients, is for SSRIs. Now, the use of SSRIs for both IBS-C and IBS-D patients was given the same recommendation, and it was also the same recommendation found in 2014. And so this is the recommendation against the use of SSRIs, one that is given a conditional recommendation with low certainty of evidence. And that wraps up our recommendations from the AGA on the pharmacological options in managing IBS-D. Now, quite a few recommendations are unchanged from 2014, but a couple new updates in this 2022 guideline as well, including more options for our patients when treating their IBS-D symptoms, hopefully leading to improved quality of life. Now, of course, what we went over today was done in the Guideline Central quick reference format. If you're looking for more information about the recommendations or these guidelines, you can find them on our website at guidelinescentral.com, where you'll see the link to the full text guideline as well as our IBS with Diarrhea pocket guide and all of our other IBS content. Thank you guys for joining us today to talk about IBS with Diarrhea and the AGA guidelines. Make sure you check out their other IBS guideline released in 2022 on the pharmacological management of IBS with constipation. We'll see you guys next time.